Thank you all for joining me this hour for a presentation webinar about content marketing trends to follow in 2020. The learnings that we're going to go through today, some will be familiar, some will be new, and some will be a reminder and tips and tricks for how you might do content development for your channels. So you can follow Anvil on Twitter at Anvil Media, or you can follow me on Twitter as well at PDXAdman. Briefly, a little bit about me. I've been married 24 years, have 4 sons, been in advertising marketing for 20 plus years, and work here at Anvil as VP of Business Development, Strategy, and Hiring Acquisition. The agenda this afternoon is going to be about the content marketing ecosystem, part of it, most of which you should be familiar with, remind us all about the why of content marketing. Then we'll get into the meat of the presentation, talking about the content marketing trends for 2020 as we look to what's going to develop next year, look a little bit beyond 2020 for future trends, and then with time at the end, we'll have time for questions and answers that you can type into us. So here is a slide that you all should be familiar with of the content marketing ecosystem, how it's broken up into 4 distinct buckets. One of the earned media, where you get through with publicity, if you have media relations department in your organization, or if you have a media relations PR firm. The shared media, where you get into partnerships where some of the nonprofits do community service, they have charity tie-ins, they do co-branding, do co-marketing through events and trade shows. And then obviously shared media in the social media bucket with all the different opportunities to go through those channels, which I'll go through a little bit more in depth here momentarily. Owned media, this is the meat of this presentation, and we're focusing on the content that you'll be developing or looking to develop with your team, or if you're a sole proprietor, some of the content that you should be spending most of your focus on. And then the paid media, getting into programmatic, digital advertising, paid search, paid social. Everything nowadays is pay to play. Instagram will still allow you to do some things organically, but I believe in 2020 they're going to move that more to a paid model, as Facebook likes to continue to make lots of money. And media integration, those are things, your lead generation, any of your drip campaigns, email campaigns that you're going. So this is the foundation for what you're going to be talking about. The one part we're going to focus on specifically is the content through the owned media. So what we'd like to do before we get going into it is like the why of content marketing. Obviously, some of this makes a lot of sense as to why we're doing these things, but always look back to the why of whatever you're doing. If you're taking the time to do something, make sure you're measuring it back to the why. So obviously the why of content marketing is increasing brand awareness for your clients, for your business, for your brand. Make sure that the content that is being created has the same styles, has the same tone. You're going from brand guidelines. If internally you need to make sure you're monitoring that and managing that so that the brand does not have anything off-brand from either a tone or a message. Especially in social media, there's a lot of opportunities to put your foot in your mouth. Make sure that is policed properly. Another why is make sure you're driving leads and purchases. So a lot of the content should be driving to your KPIs, whether that's brand awareness, whether that's acquisitions, maybe that's e-commerce, maybe that's leads, maybe that's getting more activity on your sales funnel. That's important. I won't talk too much today about improved SEO, but keywords are important to every business, no matter if you're an organization or you're an agency, sole proprietor, whatever situation you find yourself in. Improving SEO is important, so that's one of the whys of doing content marketing. You should know some of the keywords in your industry, in your market. Improving your position in industry. That if you're not generating content to help move your business forward, then you're obviously doing yourself a disservice. So that's a no-brainer, so I won't get too far into that. And then long tail results. Long tail results is kind of a byproduct of keywords. And what's the overall goal? So we're focusing primarily today on the future 2020, which is obviously 6 months out. But what are other things that your content can do to develop to set up a positive foot forward for you and your organization moving forward? Making sure you're looking at the strategy, making sure it's evolving with new mediums and new opportunities that are going to be coming on board here in the next 6 to 12 months. So here are the trends to follow. Here's your standard content marketing graphic. So obviously, number one, this is super simple. Everyone should be doing it. Everyone should be developing a plan for their content marketing. I've seen internal organizations have switched their whole marketing budget to just basically focusing on content development and the various channels for which it's distributed, whether that's a marketing department of 1 or a marketing department of 20. Everyone has a position at the table for developing and implementing content development. So it's important to identify the channels. I'll go speak briefly on it in the next slide, but back in the olden days, your content team didn't call it a content team, it was your marketing team. You're doing collateral, you're doing brochures, you're getting ready for trade shows, you're putting together presentations, you're doing content development of that nature. Well, now it's been a nice bucket of content marketing in the last 10 to 15 years, and that has continued to evolve. So you make sure you are getting the basics for each of these channels. And we also recommend this is table stakes, develop a quarterly content calendar for all your channels, not just your social media, but include your email, your blog, your website, any points of distribution of content that you're developing. Make sure you're putting it out on a quarterly basis so that you can plan ahead. It gives you opportunity to make adjustments as the news cycles change, or if something else may change in your industry, so you can adapt to it, but you need to have a plan in place. And then there's a link here that I'm including that you can have access to at the end of the presentation that goes to HubSpot, talks about all the different tools for collaboration and other tips and tricks that can help you in developing content. So that'll be important. Another key to having an effective content marketing plan and looking towards 2020 is original content maintains engagement. So one of the things that a lot of people like to look at, they look at Outbrain and other content aggregators where they look for clickbait or something along those lines if you're in the consumer segment. What the research is showing and what I've discovered in articles is that original content is really what your clients and your customers are looking for, whether it's a product review that is genuine, maybe it's a new product, maybe someone in your industry or from your company speaks about something, then you take that transcript and then turn that into a blog post or repurpose that content in another way or another form that can be digested. The bottom line, it needs to be original, it needs to be relevant. Trying to not share your expertise will negatively impact your brand. Make sure you are keeping everything on a schedule, and that you make sure you keep everything on topic. And whether it's a webinar where you're speaking on your industry in an environment like this, keep it on topic, make sure it's original, and make sure it's what the audience is looking for. So the minimum for content distribution, this is the old model where you would do monthly content. Some clients would say, well, we wish we had more than one person developing the content. Well, whether it's one person or a team of 5 or more, this is the bare bones that agencies, clients, and the like should be doing for the content generation. So in this example, for instance, I'll use Anvil as an example. This webinar that I'm giving today will turn into a blog post, which then may end up as an article in our newsletter, which will be going out through email. And then the webcast on this will be residing on our website. And then we promoted it and may even promote it after the fact on social media. So we're using one piece of content and distributing it in chunks and pieces in different channels, and that's all original content. So this is the minimum we believe you should have for content distribution. Getting into email marketing, this is a takeaway that you'll have in the deck as well, of looking into you should have an integrated email marketing campaign, whether you're a consumer, whether you're B2B, whether you're a sole proprietor, whether you're an agency, because it's important that you are tracking where your prospects are in any type of drip campaign, where people are in the sales funnel. Some people have active marketing automation platforms. Some people have their own CRMs, and so it's important to track it. It was recently came back from Digital Summit that was here in Portland, and email marketing has been around forever, but it's still one of the most effective tools, and for clients, it's one of their best ROI channels as well. So email marketing should be a part of your content marketing mix. Getting into the social media channels, this is table stakes. I'll breeze through this, but these are things that everyone probably knows. But these are latest stats that we pulled in Q4 of 2018. But the size of the social media, so there's over 3.2 billion people doing that. Facebook is the 500-pound gorilla, 2.2 billion users. We all know a majority of them are Gen X and older, but there still is a proportion of millennials who are in the mid-20s to mid-30s who are on Facebook, but it's typically everyone's parents are now on Facebook and people are migrating off the platform. Instagram is where content development is going to be key, and we get into influencers here later on in this presentation. It's the visual medium, and sometimes people like to share their Facebook posts and post them on Instagram, and then you have a different audience, different demographic. Those don't always go hand in hand, and that's something that you need to know from a content standpoint. So from a content team, you should have someone who is a social media expert on your team, that whether they're a millennial or not is irrelevant. So they need to know their channels well and the audiences and the content that needs to be distributed there. YouTube is still the second largest search engine. Obviously Google and YouTube and then Bing and Yahoo aren't even really on the table for any discussion. And if you're creating content, video is still important. I'll get into that a little bit later, but if people don't like to read anymore, as you know, more and more people are lazy. And the immersion of podcasts has come up big in recent years, and I'll talk about that as well. It's the content, from YouTube, people want to watch these things. So part of what we do on these webinars as well is we would purpose them and post them on YouTube and put in the keywords within our description so that we're getting organic traffic to our own YouTube channel for the content we generate, which is something that everyone who was on this webinar should make a note of and do as well, because it is an effective strategy to driving long-tail traffic. Twitter is more of a male-dominated medium. It's what we've predicted in the past that it may go away, but it's still going to be there. It's a leading news source for all things that are going on, and it's a channel that you have to be active. You have to be doing 5 to 7 posts a day probably to be relevant. But it's a channel that, and these stats are things that everyone on this webinar should know. And then Reddit is another one that's growing. It's people who are seeking for more information. I'll get a little bit more into both Reddit and Quora later. But these are important channels that you can use to distribute content to people who are seeking questions and answers and looking to research your brand, your service, your client's brand, your client's service, and allowing them to see it in more of a user-driven forum than pushed advertising. So those are the channels. A little bit more about Reddit. You have this as a takeaway, but you can advertise on this platform, but you also can put in your own content and categorize pages, which is important. And a channel that you or your clients could use to allow people to discover your product or service in a more organic environment. Quora is more of your Q&A. We think back in the olden days of Ask Jeeves, but people are looking for answers quickly, and they don't want to go to social media sites. So this is another channel that you can use to reach both B2B and B2C prospects or consumers in the category as well, especially if you have something that's technical to sell or that there's a longer sales cycle that you would want to use Quora potentially as a channel. And they also, as all these mediums they have their own advertising as well. So just want to touch base quickly on that. So the third thing that's important to look at in 2020 and beyond, if you're not doing it already, is influencers. And there's also a lot of horror stories about influencers, which I won't go into, but on the following slide, there's a link to this industry study showing that influencers are the ones who are driving content and results for B2B, B2C clients as well as agencies as well. So Google searches have gone up over 1,500% as people are looking to get into that. From an agency standpoint, we're a digital marketing agency, but their influencer marketing agencies have come on the scene back in 2016 and has more than quadrupled here into 2018. So it's continuing to grow exponentially. You can read all the stats on there, but 69 or almost 70% use influencer marketing. So if you're not using it, it's something that you should consider or put it in a line item, budget item for next year. And when you're doing that, keep in mind that some of the content that an influencer would generate may replace some of the content that you would do or put into your quarterly content calendar or something that you may do. So depends on the influencer, depends on your market, depends on what product or service you're sharing, but they can also, as part of that agreement you have with them, generate that content for you, whether it's in a video format, whether it's a blog post, whether they're photos. Consider that as you look at your budget item, and also note to whomever is in charge of budgets that the budgets for these have continued to grow over the years. And so this is something almost some of your audiences are going to expect. Obviously, this was a survey of marketers. Almost 92% said that it was an effective form of marketing. There are the horror stories, and then in addition, where they've 2/3 have said that there is some sketchy influencer behavior out there. We, from our own experience, have worked with influencer marketing agencies, and we do offer our own influencer marketing service, but it's not an exact science. It's not like you were buying impressions or looking for conversions as you would in a Google Ads. You're trying to broker with individuals who are entrepreneurs. They're making their money through the internet. Sometimes they're professional, and sometimes seems like more likely than not they are not. They need to be dealt with caution, as I noted at the top. And so then look at the channels, obviously, that predominantly use influencer marketing. You have Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and then others. And then also, depending on your own industry, you can have, if you have your own dedicated YouTube channel, you can use your own influencers through your own markets and your own marketing tools and channels. So again, this is the link that you want to go to for Influencer Marketing Hub, where I got all these statistics. We didn't make these up, and we didn't do them ourselves. Obviously, the biggest challenge for influencers is finding people to participate. That is where a lot of the agencies have got their business, as they try and cultivate their own verticals, their own influencers for each vertical, and then try to cultivate those relationships so that when said company comes to them in a particular category, that they can say, well, we got these people who we have a direct relationship with. Then managing contractors for deadlines, that's always a challenge. Bandwidth is always is the biggest challenge of any content. And then so that you can see the rest of those stats for yourself. But it's important to note that influencers are here to stay. They're not going away, and they're something that you should adopt for your next year's content calendar. And then just going into the growth of influencers. So number of platforms and agencies. So back in the good old days of 2015, there were only about 190. Well, now I think in 2019, I couldn't find a newer stat is over 1,000. So it's growing exponentially. So buyer beware, but also know that this is an expectation your customers are looking towards. There are in the olden days, you would have guest publishers, guest writers for trade publications. Now look at that. You can see those were early influencer marketers. Now take that into 2019, where they're doing it more in a visual medium or providing that content for you. So one of the things that we want you to remember and know that in 2020, and it started over the years, is that voice search is real. If you have a Siri, if you have a if you have an Alexa, you're talking to your phone one way, shape, or form. And so that's emerged in 2017. I believe they said 16% of people got voice assistance for Christmas. And so the emergence of that market, Amazon dropping the price point so that could be a gift. Now it shows that 1 in 6 people in the United States own a smart speaker. 40% of people use voice search once a day. And they're saying by next year, 50% of all searches will be voice searches. And so what that means from a brand standpoint is that the content that you are creating needs to be within those search terms that people are going to be looking for as they speak into their devices. And so the way people search for something on their mobile phone is different than how they type it into their laptop. And the convergence has happened in 2017, where more people are doing their searches on mobile than they are on laptop or desktop. So we're already there. And so that's something that you need to be aware of, that it's real. Developing your own keywords that would be implemented from a voice search standpoint will help you get to your product pages if they're on your site, or if they're on Amazon or wherever else you may be listing your products. And then this is a market that's going to continue to explode and to be noted, and also to be, one of the rumors that we're hearing in 2020 or 2021, Google may make it mandatory that websites are going to be voice search compatible. That's going to be hard for them to enforce, but back in 2017, they put in a mandate that all websites need to be mobile optimized. So we know that Google wields the hammer, and that the voice search mandatory is a rumor at this point. So I just want to reiterate that. But in the case of Google, it's always better to be prepared before it happens. And then just a couple statistics here on voice search. Obviously we don't care so much about other markets, but the U.S. it's just growing exponentially, and that they use them for their podcasts. They use them to share and listen to the content that you are creating. And whether you believe that or not, that is true. A lot of people use podcasts for how to learn things and listen to them through their smart speakers. So these are things that just validate the point that voice is coming and voice is going to continue to grow, specifically starting next year. That leads me to the next content that you should be looking to develop in 2020 and beyond, if you aren't already, is podcasts. So on the bottom there are full stats through the research that we did for this presentation. But podcasting is going back to the old days where people sat around the radio and listened, and nowadays everyone's going just talks to the voice assistant and says, okay, Google, play my NPR, and then they'll do an NPR, and that NPR will be showing a podcast, or they'll go through different types of content. And then specifically for this presentation, you look to the right, these are all the different podcasts that are for marketing. So if you're a consultant or an agency, you may have your own podcast where you can share your expertise with your clients and then distribute that content, which then would drive leads back to you. Or if you are in a B2B environment, you can talk about the benefits of your product and all these different opportunities for you to share your content. So, 70% of people have heard of podcasts, 51% have listened. These stats are just jumping off the charts. So the fact that some of you may not embrace podcasts, or you may not, you fear, have the tinfoil hat on about the digital assistants, all these things are real and they're all here and they're not going away. So also, the podcasts are great to reach a millennial audience, younger audience, and a more affluent audience. So it's something that, if you haven't thought about it, it's something now you have 6 months ahead of time to plan out what would the podcast be. And so, for instance, if there's trade shows coming up, and you can talk about preparing for the seasonality for whatever vertical market you might be in. There's all sorts of opportunities for you to develop your podcast. But there's investments and things that need to be made on that point. But it's something that can be done relatively inexpensively, just as videos were probably 4 or 5 years ago. And so one of the things I just wanted to give you a slice of how people listen to podcasts. Spotify has doubled down and put a lot of marketing dollars behind trying to get people to use their music service, and they're reaching the older demographics by having podcasts there. So as podcasts becomes more vernacular in pop culture, it's going to be important that you develop a content strategy that includes podcasts to some degree. Maybe just do one for Q1 and next year, or see how it may work best. But you may also be doing a blog post that you write out that's 800 to 1,200 words. Well, why not look at the outline of that to maybe make that a podcast, and then reuse that content and then share that as a blog post. So there's lots of opportunities. Again, it's another channel, it's another medium, but you're most likely that you're already creating content that people would want to listen to or see, and make note of that. Is sometimes when you come back to your marketing team or those in charge of budgets, that they see this is a lot of extra work, when reality is it's not as much work as they may think. So one of the things that's going to be important in next year is making sure all of what you're doing is matching to your KPIs. So looking at the data. So for instance, we use Google Data Studio to visualize analytics for us as an agency, and some of our clients use it. Some of them use other Tableau, or however you want to pronounce that, and other data visualization tools. But if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. And so looking at specifically, this is the snapshot of the social media engagement for us as an agency, and we see that almost 90% of it happens on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. So if it's on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, then we don't necessarily need to be creating a ton of video content to go on our YouTube channel. And look at what the data is telling you. So I always think back to the old CSIs where Grisham said, follow the evidence. We're saying here, follow the data. What is your data showing you? Is it showing you're getting tons of website traffic? Is it flat? Is it spiking? And why is it? We have a 10-page Data Studio report that goes through all the analytics of our site that says how people are getting there, what's organic, what's paid, all the different channels we use for content to drive people to our site. But it's going to take someone on your team, if it's not yourself, to look at those analytics to see really where's the low-hanging fruit for you to optimize to develop the content that's going to get the results to drive leads, revenue, and conversions. And then one of the last things I'm going to share here is that video is still growing. It was huge talking about video marketing in 2014, 2015, but it still continues this day. The older audiences, if you look at Facebook, there's those quick recipes of how to make some type of dessert, some type of food. And most of those videos are made where they have the type over on the screen as the videos are developed. Obviously, you may or may not be in the food category, but the lesson learned there is that you can put a lot of money in a great original sound and music for a video. You have a really expensive voiceover, but most of people, I don't have a statistic on this, but most people watch videos on mute. So unless it's something that's going to be really important, I would just recommend that all videos that you do that are of instructional, you're keeping them 30 to 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, but it's got to be super dynamic content. Most people are all going to be video focused, video centric. Obviously the stats here speak for themselves, but one of the things that's important as marketers, as we help drive leads for the sales team, is one of the last bullets there is 66% more qualified leads per year by using video. So whether that's in your Marketo sales funnel, you have a video on a landing page that gets somebody there, or you simply have a video of the week on your blog post or on your website, or maybe you have a video embedded in your email, you're going to get more engagement no matter what with video. We talked about podcasts, talked about voice search. Those are things that are more learning curve for you to get into, but video is still your bread and butter and still should be a part of your content marketing mix. And so a couple of trends we wanted to note moving into 2020 and beyond. We've heard a lot about augmented reality. This started back in 2016 with the Pokemon Go. Most of us who are on this webinar may not be Pokemon fans, but it was a snapshot into the future of where marketing can go in content development. So augmented reality as a market is about $3.5 billion now. It's going to continue to grow, and that 70% of people believe augmented reality can bring them benefits, and I'll show you a couple on the next page. Most of them are obviously in the consumer segment, but also it's emerging in automotive. Most of the augmented reality are your Gen Z millennials, and it's obviously in the video game market, but I will show on the next page, and then this link here also talks about stats about augmented reality. Facebook has acquired 11 augmented reality or virtual reality companies. We all know, Facebook is gathering data on everything, but also, they're not idiots. They know where the future goes, and that can continue to double down to bring augmented reality to the retail environment where it can be more relevant to marketers, and that's something to make a note of. And so a more specific example is this makeup. So you go to a retail location, you connect your device to your phone, and your image goes up on the device, and then you can then start putting different types of color on your face. So this is a makeup engagement. This is something that's from 2 days ago or just yesterday of what was going on. So that, augmented reality is they're using beauty influencers for these tools. And so this is a combination of augmented reality, social media influencers, how they're using tools, and developing this content. Obviously, there's technology behind this, but it's important to know where the future lies. What is going to be the next trend that's going to be important for someone, your CEO or your CMO will say, well, why aren't we doing this? Or obviously it's got to be relevant, but why aren't we doing this? Where do we stand on this? These are trends to be watching and paying attention to, just because that's another channel for content that's going out there. And if you have an ability to put content in this arena, you're going to stand out amongst your competitors, most definitely. And then the other one, this is one that I always laugh at, is virtual reality. I did a college paper back in '95 about virtual reality. So, 24 years ago, it hasn't emerged as the great content or experience that everyone's talked about. There was a popular movie last year, Ready Player One. There was a book before that. It's become obviously huge in the gaming industry. A lot of people use their mobile devices for virtual reality, but it is a growing market. 50% or more people in the U.S. are aware of virtual reality devices, and there's already 22 million people using it. And then Facebook owns Oculus Rift, which is turned into a gaming system. Again, this is something to be more aware of. I think augmented reality is more of a reality for marketers than virtual reality. Both of these skew towards gaming and more technology, but there could be more of the retail play for augmented reality than virtual reality would be. So those are a couple trends that to keep aware of. They're hot topics that are going on and will be continuing to grow in 2020 and beyond. And so that's, before we get into questions and answers, I just want to do a plug for our next webinar, which will be next month, end of the month. Our founder and owner, Kent Lewis, will present online reputation management, maximizing SEO, pay-per-click, social media, and reviews to curate your brand. So as wanted to make that plug, and if you guys have any questions, please feel free to type them in. One question we got: which of the top social media platforms would you suggest marketing on? Well, that's a good question. Depends on your market. And so if you're a visual brand, we recommend you marketing on Instagram. And if you're more of a B2B type of market and audience, we recommend marketing on LinkedIn. And then if you are both either a B2B or B2C, having at least a Facebook page makes sense so that you are getting the domain authority linked to your website. That's always important. I knew that, Mary Ann Moore now.
Yeah, Mary Ann Moore and Steve Jones. I don't know if the recording worked or not. It's just been stuck here and I don't even know where to stop it or record. Alright.
Thank gosh.
What the hell happened?
It's all right.
No problem. Good job, I learned a thing or two.
That's good.
You start sipping on these more up.
Nailed it.